Welcome back to DIY guitar making. The parlor guitar saga continues here. I've got this back plate, I've got the braces all glued up, and I'm gonna show you how I did that. Okay? I'm actually really excited about how quick and easy it is on these tiny guitars to throw this bracing pattern together, which, you know what, let me talk about the bracing pattern just a little bit. Honestly don't want to get too into the weeds here about why I did this pattern that I did, because honestly I'm still working it out myself. But basically I wanted to continue with the theme that I have going of doing lattice bracing for backs. I really do think it's very appropriate, even though it's pretty labor intensive to do all the joints to correctly make lattice braces. Lattice, not ladder, okay, for you guys listening. That is L-A-T-T-I-S-E, bracing. And what that means is, just imagine, well, everyone knows what a lattice looks like, right? It's a series of X's. Now, for a guitar that is this small, I came to the conclusion in my own head that the lattice bracing would just be way too stiff no matter how I did it, because each one of those joints where the center of the X is very stiff. There's so much stiffness at and around those joints that it would really make for an overly stiff back. It works on a larger guitar, but on a small guitar like this, it would just be too stiff. So I basically ended up using still the slanted pattern of the lattice braces, but without the cross hatching of the braces. Basically I just removed those other two braces from the pattern. It's vastly simpler, and I like that. And yeah, I think it's going to work out pretty good, but time will tell. All right, now let's get into the nitty-gritty of throwing this together. Like I said, it's real quick and easy. Let's go ahead and do it. So here's my template that I made for the back braces. Oh, and by the way, I should mention, because it's kind of jumps out at you, but the one brace at the top, which is not slanted, is that way because it is simply there basically to support the neck block and help tie the neck block into the sides. So that just runs straight across and basically butts up against the neck block, or at least comes very close to it. But then the other braces are following that slant. It's experimental. Don't try this at home. Unless you want to, but just don't. Okay, let's get into it. So I've got some strips here of Western red cedar, and we are going to make some braces out of this. These are 6mm width, which is just a standard dimension that I've been using for a long time now. The idea is tall and skinny is the way to go. It follows the cube rule, which, if you're familiar with Irvin Samaji and his teachings, if you set up a brace of the same exact volume, but most of that volume is put towards its height, it's going to be 3 times stronger than a brace of the same exact volume, but the volume is spread out widthwise like this, okay? That's the cube rule. Just remember, tall and skinny. So right now I'm just going to mark so I can cut these on the bandsaw. And then I could probably just use a scrap. Yeah, then this scrap piece will fit up there. So I just need these two. I'm going to go make a quick cut. So I'm going to sand these in the radius dish. Right off the get-go here, I like to just mark T for top on all the tops of these, because after we sand these, it is very easy to mistakenly glue the flat side, the top side down, after you put all that work into radiusing the bottom. And that's what we're doing, by the way. I'm radiusing the glue surface of these braces so that once they're glued to the back plate is very, very thin, only about 100 thousandths of an inch. And that back plate is going to be pulled into the radius that we want by the braces and also by the rim set, which I have over here, which has also been radiused in this dish, okay? This is a 30-foot radius dish, but that doesn't matter too much. You can use a wide variety of radii for instrument making, and many people do. All right, so now on the bottom here, I can just mark this up with pencil. That way when I sand, I'll know when I'm there, when all the pencil disappears. And I'm just going to take this whole cluster of 3. Like I said before, doing back braces like this on such a small guitar is it's really nice as a change of pace for me. Just how simple it is. I just have 3 braces, and I can hold them all together like this and sand them at the same time. Now, once this basically gets there, I am going to sand them just a tad individually, just because pinching 3 together like this, there's a tendency, especially for the middle one, to not quite sand all the way, just because my finger pressure is really on the outside ones and not on this one that's sandwiched in the middle. So that's just something to be aware of. They will need a little bit of individual attention just to be sure that that radius is true all the way across. Very important, I'm not pressing down when I'm doing this, because softwoods like spruce or cedar are extremely flexible, right? That's part of the reason why we like them. And so if I'm pressing down, then I'm actually pressing it into that radius. I'm essentially cheating, and those pencil marks will go away very quickly if you press down, but you won't actually have the radius on there. This bottom surface will basically be flat. So I just want to gently graze across the radius dish surface. Looks like they're all there except for this one. And I bet you this one will go right away if we just isolate it away from these 2. Almost. There we go. All right, let's hop over here. Now, just as a part of the flow in my particular workshop, I happen to have multiple 30-foot radius dishes. I use 30-foot radii a lot in my instrument making, and as a part of my flow, I have purchased several 30-foot radius dishes just so that I can glue up backs and tops in the go bar deck and not have to wait for that glue to cure in order to use a 30-foot radius for something else, like, you know, sanding or radiusing the rim set like this, right? I can glue stuff up and then just keep working on a different radius dish over here. I'm only mentioning that because what I'm doing right now is, like I said, I'm going to individually fine-tune each of these just to make sure that I've got that radius. I could re-pencil this up if I wanted to. Here, I'll go ahead and do that. But I don't necessarily do that every time here. So this radius dish, I guess getting to the point I was making about having multiple radius dishes, this radius dish has a finer grit on it, so I can improve my glue joint just a little bit by fine-tuning the grit. This is 100 grit. We started out on 60 grit. Okay, the 60 grit just gets me there really quickly, and then the 100 grit just makes the glue joint a little bit better. However, if you don't have multiple radius dishes like I happen to have for my particular workflow, I honestly don't recommend getting them just to be able to do this, just to be able to progress through the grit, because 60 grit or 80 grit or whatever you use, 100 grit on just one radius dish, that's going to be fine. Okay, it's a big deal to have both storage wise and money wise. It's a big deal to get a lot of radius dishes. So that's just one of those idiosyncratic things with my own process, right? Just wanted to point that out. Okay, so that one looks good. It's very soft wood, so it does not take long to turn those 60 grit scratches into 100 grit scratches. Okay. All right, so here's our back plate for guitar number 86. You can see, and I just did a video on this, we've got a lovely back stripe here. And yeah, you can see it on the inside and the outside. And that's just because this back stripe is wedged between our two halves there. Right, so it runs all the way through the thickness of the material. Okay, so let's place this right here. We've got our radius dish as the base here. We don't want to just glue this onto a flat board. We want the radius dish behind the braces. And now the first thing I'm going to do is just dry fit these braces on here. Got to figure out which one goes where. The smallest one goes up top. The second smallest is the waist brace, and then the biggest one is down here in the lower bout. You can't see it on the camera, but I already have marks on the rosewood of the back here for the locations of my braces. And I transferred those from that template that you saw earlier. So using those marks, which are always hard to see on rosewood. Rosewood is challenging in that way. There it is. I'm going to line that up. And I'm going to dry fit this in place. So check this out. I have a bunch of little scraps of mostly mahogany, but you know, any hardwood here. Little square scraps with double stick tape on one side. And I'm going to use these to reference and hold my positions of the braces so that when I glue them, I don't have to worry whatsoever about them swimming when they're lubricated by the glue. So I always call these spacer blocks. Put one right there, one on the other side to box it in. So that's on this end of the brace, and then I'll do the same exact thing down on the opposite end of the brace. And essentially what I'm doing is boxing it in and creating a little channel for the brace to sit in so it can't move. And then I can go ahead and glue that one in. It's real easy to overdo the glue here because it's a very thin surface. But like I always say, it's better to overdo the glue than it is to underdo it. It's a little dry right here. Alright, now this just goes right in that channel that we've created. And then starting from one end of the outline and working my way back, I'm going to put a go bar about every 3 to 4 inches. And I've got my cleanup stick right here. That is the sound of me sharpening it on a sanding board that I have at my side. And this is the kind of squeeze out that I like to see. It's just little orbs, little round balls of squeeze out. And those pick up really easily. Now I always clean up squeeze out dry like this, just with a dry stick. I never try to go in there with a wet rag or anything like that, because really you're just smearing and moving the glue around that way. And notice how I'm just taking tiny little nips of glue and then kind of rolling it off my fingers and throwing it on the floor. Again, that's so I don't just smear the glue around. I don't want to get greedy with it and try to take all the glue at once. Another little tip for you is I like to sort of triage the glue as I'm doing this. So what I mean by that, seems like kind of an odd term for glue squeeze out cleanup, but what I mean by triage is I just real quickly go for the smallest glue squeeze out first, because that's going to dry very quickly, whereas if I do have any gobs of squeeze out, I know that that's going to be just fine if I just leave it alone and get it at the end. It takes a long time for the thick gobby squeeze out to actually cure. Another little tip is if you wait just a couple minutes, or even just a minute, the glue will become a little bit leathery, as it's becoming right now, and it's easier to pick up that way. Now I don't follow this advice myself, simply because if I wait for the glue to become leathery, just knowing myself, I'm apt to forget about it completely, which I've done. So I just pick it up right away, and as long as I pick it up carefully, and I don't try to pick it up all at once like I said, just take little nips, then it comes off beautifully. So, and on we go. I'm going to do the next brace, same thing. I'm going to box it in with the spacer to give it a little channel. Glue it in with the go bars, and then clean up the squeeze out. If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.